Chapter 81. You are listening at novelfull.audio. If only you could have hung on a few more months, Bai Lan sighed, standing before Ubuyashiki Yaya's grave. He'd been his first real friend since arriving in this world. Bai Lan hated the thought of Ubuyashiki Yaya just fading away, but ghosts were immune to the sun, and developing a cure was proving nearly impossible. In the original story, Nezuko's immunity to sunlight was a freak accident. Muzan Kibutsuji had injected the Kamado family with his blood, but this blood, unlike what he gave other demons, contained centuries of his research. It was one of Muzan's experiments. However, everyone in the Kamado family except Nezuko died. And Nezuko herself briefly entered a death-like state, leading Muzan to believe she, like the rest, was a failure. 087, so he left. Nezuko's sunlight immunity was inextricably linked to Muzan's long research. Later, Tamayo, through studying the blue spider lily and demon blood, developed a corresponding medicine. Combined with Mikago's research, Nezuko was then finally able to withstand the sun, but things were different now. Bai Lan and Tamayo didn't have upper-rank blood to work with. They'd killed Upper Moon 2, Doma, and Upper Moon 6, Jutaro and Daki. Bai Lan hadn't considered collecting their blood when Futaro and Fukiji had fought those demons, so now they didn't have it. This made researching a sunlight-blocking drug much harder. He had collected the blood of the new Upper Moon 4, Hantengu, after killing him, but before he and Jusher could translate it into concrete research, Ubuyashiki Yaya passed away. Give Bai Lan and Tamayo another month, and he was confident he could develop the drug. If he could turn Tamayo and Nezuko into sun-immune demons, Muzan would definitely sense it. Even though they were beyond his direct control, Muzan could still feel changes in them, sense their environment. The moment they stood in the sun, he'd know. Then, if Muzan wanted to devour Tamayo and Nezuko and become sun-immune himself, he'd have to show himself to the Demon Slayer Corps. Of course, he could send minions to retrieve Nezuko, but it didn't matter how many, even Kokoshibo. Only Muzan himself had a chance of taking Tamayo and Nezuko from the Demon Slayers. Even knowing about Tamayo and Nezuko's sunlight immunity, it would still take Muzan about a month to locate the Demon Slayer HQ and the Butterfly Mansion. That was what happened in the original story. In other words, if Ubuyashiki Yoshiya could have held on for 2 more months, everything could have been resolved smoothly. Unfortunately, fate was cruel, and no miracle occurred for Ubuyashiki Yoshiya. My condolences, Mrs. Tianyin, Bai Lan said, offering comfort to Ubuyashiki Amain, who stood beside the grave in a black kimono. Ubuyashiki Amain didn't respond, simply staring at the grave. After a moment, she turned to Bai Lan and spoke softly, Mr. Bai Lan, please guide me from now on. Bai Lan nodded slightly. Please, the pleasure is all mine. With Ubuyashiki Yoya gone, Ubuyashiki Amain was now the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. From now on, he'd be dealing directly with her. Well, I should get going. After a few more brief exchanges, Bai Lan said his goodbyes and left. Ubuyashiki Amain watched him go, Ubuyashiki Yaya's last words echoing in her mind. She bit her lip. I will do my best, sir. Back at the Butterfly Mansion, Bai Lan dove straight back into researching the blue spider lily, Nezuko, and Hantengu's blood. He couldn't afford to waste any time. He needed to develop a drug that would lure Muzan out as quickly as possible and get rid of him once and for all. It was the best thing for everyone. Half a month flew by. Bai Lan was dragged away from his research. Another serious injury? Did you run into more of the 12 Kazuki? Bai Lan asked, looking at Kamado Tanjiro and the others, their faces covered in bandages. Around the protagonist, all kinds of things tend to happen, and he's prone to all kinds of injuries. Ahaha, well, I defeated lower rank 5, and my sword was really beat up, so I went to the swordsmith village and ran into Upper Moons 4 and 5. Kamado Tanjiro, lying in a hospital bed, scratched his head sheepishly. Upper Moon 4 and 5? Yeah, Hantengu and Gyako. Kamado Tanjiro confirmed. So, you beat them? Bai Lan wasn't surprised, as he had dealt with the previous demons. He was curious and asked, hearing Bai Lan's question. Kamado Tanjiro suddenly seemed embarrassed. No, I got my butt kicked. Nezuko, Miss Kaneo, and Miss Kanroji showed up just in time and took them down. Kamado Tanjiro said with an awkward smile. Oh, I see. With their strength, they definitely could. Where were the other three? Bai Lan nodded, understanding. He wasn't surprised at all. After all, Nezuko, Kanroji Mitsuri, and Kaneo were all incredibly strong. Nezuko's power was probably close to his own. There was a competition. Kanroji Mitsuri was a Hashira, and she also had fire abilities. She continued to work on her fire abilities in the past year to be an extremely strong level, and Kaneo was the strongest. Kaneo, having mastered a perfect version of the breath of the sun, had improved faster than anyone else in the Demon Slayer Corps besides Byakuran. Each day, she changed. It had only been a few months since she completed her trial. Shanahu's strength had already grown to Hashira level, comparable to Gyomii Himejima. With that kind of formation, dealing with Hantengu and Gyako was a piece of cake. Well, I was all sweaty from fighting, so I went to take a bath. Kamado Tanjiro said with a cold sweat on his forehead. As he was speechless, Bai Lan looked at the injured Kamado Tanjiro and thought about what Nezuko and the other three would do after they came back and laughed. Tanjiro, Nezuko's abandoning you. It's all thanks to you, Mr. Bai Lan. Nezuko clings to you all the time now. You're closer than my brother. What can I do? There's nothing you can do about it, you're just too charming. Bai Lan shrugged. Hateful. Kamado Tanjiro gritted his teeth. Chapter 82. You are listening at novelfull.audio. A month after Ubuyashiki Yoya's death, a drug that shielded ghosts from sunlight was finally developed thanks to the efforts of Byakuran, Tamashii, Kane, and Shinobu. Good, feels good, clothes, Nezuko stammered, basking in the warmth, her first words in a long time. Ah, yes, it's very comfortable. After 400 years, I'm seeing the sun again, Tamayo murmured, gazing at the rising sun. Tears welled in her eyes, a feeling of pure joy washing over her. Only she knew how much she longed to see the sun. Ever since Muzan Kibutsuji turned her into a demon, sunlight had been forbidden. For centuries without the sun, without feeling its warmth on her skin, and now, finally, she could see it again. Behind them, Byakuran and the others watched silently, respecting the moment. The Hashira of the Demon Slayer Corps, members of the Ubuyashiki family, Butterfly Mansion staff, and Tanjiro. Kamado's group of 3 were all present. Now, we wait for Muzan to take the bait. Byakuran, everyone, I'm counting on you, Ubuyashiki Amain murmured, stepping forward and turning to face them, bowing deeply. Don't worry. If Muzan shows his face, we won't let him escape, Byakuran said with a confident smile. The others echoed his promise to Ubuyashiki Amain. Every member of the Demon Slayer Corps, except Byakuran, was bursting with excitement. They had waited so long for this day. Their reason for joining the Corps was to fight demons and end the era of humans being preyed upon. Now, all they had to do was wait for Muzan to appear. And they would kill him, even at the cost of their own lives. With Muzan gone, the source of all demons would vanish, and no new ones could be born. Then, it would just be a matter of time to find and eliminate the remaining demons, ending the nightmare for good. Lady Amain, what did you want to see me about? Byakuran asked, a peculiar expression on his face, inside the Ubuyashiki mansion. His strange look was because he and Ubuyashiki Amain were the only people there. He had been at Butterfly Mansion when he received her invitation. Arriving at the mansion, Byakuran sensed something was off, a distinct lack of people. Fearing something was amiss, he used his spatial perception. The mansion was empty save for Ubuyashiki Amain. Before Yoya passed, he asked me to seek you out, hoping I could ensure you worked with the other demon slayers to destroy Muzan and end this scourge, Ubuyashiki Amain said softly, her eyes fixed on Byakuran. A final request. I would have killed Muzan regardless. Yoya worried too much. Byakuran sighed. He had guided Ubuyashiki Yoya out of concern that he might abandon the Demon Slayer Corps. Unlike the others, his relationship with the Corps was more of an alliance, something he could walk away from at any time, and he was crucial to Ubuyashiki Yoya's plan to defeat Muzan. Naturally, he was concerned. What Ubuyashiki Yoya didn't realize was that destroying Muzan was also Byakuran's goal. After all, killing Muzan meant a massive influx of comprehension points. The lower moons had given him 5,000 points. He couldn't possibly pass up the opportunity that Muzan presented. I know you wouldn't let Muzan go unpunished. But I still need a guarantee, Ubuyashiki Amain said, shaking her head slightly. She stood up, stepped onto the low table, and stood before Byakuran. I wonder if I can secure that promise from you, at the expense of myself, she whispered, lowering her head and moving closer. Byakuran was momentarily stunned by her closeness. Ubuyashiki Amain was beautiful, a fact Byakuran had acknowledged the first time they met. He had even thought, before knowing she was married, that he might pursue her, but she was already married, and he wasn't one to break up a family, so he dismissed the thought. Now, she was offering herself to him, only a month after Yoya's death. What made it even more surprising was that Ubuyashiki Yoya had orchestrated it all, which gave Byakuran a thrill. Despite the excitement, Byakuran hesitated. Lady Amain, Yoya and I were friends, he said, shaking his head. Are you worried that you'd be betraying my husband if you accepted me? If that's the case, there's no need to be. This is what my husband wanted as well. Before his death, he entrusted me to you, Ubuyashiki Amain said, seemingly sensing his hesitation. Yoya's request. Byakuran was stunned. He had assumed it was her own idea, not an arrangement made by Ubuyashiki Yoya. As Byakuran stood there speechless, Ubuyashiki Amain lowered her head even further, closing the distance between them. He gazed at her beautiful face so close, and after a moment of silence, he reached out and embraced her. Chapter 83. You are listening at novelfull.audio. It's been a month since Tamayo and Nezuko overcame their fear of the sun. Muzan Kibutsuji should be closing in. He'll probably show up any day now. When he does, Tamayo and I will take on Muzan, while you guys handle Kokoshibo and any other demons Muzan brings along. In the butterfly mansion, Byakuran and the others gathered in a spacious room. The topic at hand was how to deal with Kibutsuji Muzan. Byakuran could coordinate everyone else, but he couldn't control Tamayo. She wanted to become strong enough to defeat Muzan herself, which is why she originally drank his blood, so Byakuran couldn't stop her. He could only let her join him in fighting Kibutsuji Muzan. Mr. Byakuran, are you sure you and Miss Tamayo can handle this? Everyone, except Tamayo, was concerned about Byakuran's plan. Kaijuro Rengoku bluntly voiced his worries, though unspoken. The others shared his sentiment. They all worried that Byakuran couldn't defeat Muzan alone. Listen, Byakuran said calmly, shaking his head slightly. If we're losing, we'll call for backup. Everyone still frowned, but they remained silent. Byakuran had made it clear he'd ask for help if needed, so there was nothing more to say. Seeing no objections, Byakuran continued, don't worry about the lower moons. Only one upper moon remains. We don't know if Muzan has created any more demons. Let me fill you in on Upper Moon 1 situation. Upper Moon 1 is named Kokoshibo. He's the older brother of Yorichi Tsujikuni, the originator of the breath styles, and an ancestor of Machiro. To gain power, Kokoshibo turned to Muzan and became a demon. His blood demon art. Byakuran shared everything he knew about Kokoshibo, emphasizing his strength. Even if several of you, referring to Jyomiai Himejima and others, excluding Shinobu Kocho and the others, teamed up against Kokoshibo, you'd still suffer heavy losses. Even with Machiro's breath of the mist. Byakuran stressed after outlining Kokoshibo's capabilities. Everyone present trembled. They hadn't realized Byakuran held Kokoshibo in such high regard. I don't want any of you to die. So, if Muzan only brings Kokoshibo, you'll all gang up on him. Byakuran said, looking at the serious faces of the Hashira. His initial plan to eliminate Muzan and the 12 Kazuki in one fell swoop wasn't just about gaining points. It was also about ensuring the survival of Jyomiai and the others. Hearing Byakuran's words, Jyomiai and the others were surprised. They had accepted they might not survive the fight against Muzan, but Byakuran wanted them to live. Mr. Byakuran, we knew the risks when we joined the Demon Slayer Corps, Kaijuro Rengoku declared, folding his arms across his chest. Just surround Kokoshibo when the time comes. In the meantime, you'll train with me. Sparring with me will prepare you for more intense battles. Your reactions will be quicker, and you'll get hurt less. Understood, Mr. Byakuran. Kaijuro Rengoku agreed immediately. A chance to spar with Byakuran was a rare opportunity for him. The other Hashira also looked forward to it. After becoming Hashira, they'd all sparred with Byakuran and knew he was incredibly strong. Each session had helped them grow and improve. They were eager to fight Byakuran, but he was usually out hunting demons or staying at the Butterfly Mansion. They had their own missions, so they couldn't bother Byakuran all the time, even though they wanted to spar with him. Now that they had this chance, they wouldn't pass it up. Over the next few days, Byakuran and the Hashira sparred in the bamboo forest near the Butterfly Mansion, practicing their battle strategies and encirclement tactics. For the upcoming fight, they quickly developed a strong understanding and fought seamlessly together, significantly increasing their combat power. As time went on, Byakuran expected Kibutsuji Muzan to arrive any day, but the discussions continued for more than half a month, and Muzan still hadn't shown up. Did something happen to Muzan? It's been over a month, and he still hasn't found this place. Late at night, at Demon Slayer headquarters, Byakuran sat next to Amain Ubuyashiki. He stared at the full moon, frowning as he spoke. Muzan has already discovered this place. That's a fact. All the hidden members nearby have been eliminated. In that case, Muzan must have noticed something unusual around here, Amain said, smoothing Byakuran's brow. Wisteria flowers grew around Demon Slayer headquarters, but they weren't dense. The nearby hidden members had been eliminated, meaning demons had found something. Once they arrived, they'd discover the wisteria flowers, the Demon Slayer headquarters, and the Butterfly Mansion. Is Muzan strengthening his forces? Kokoshibo is the only remaining upper moon. Muzan is cautious, so he'll do everything possible before coming here. That's possible, Byakuran said, nodding after hearing Amain's words. He turned to the beautiful Amain, pulled her into his arms. It's late, my dear. Let's get some rest. Alright, be gentle. Chapter 84. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Lan hadn't expected the Demon Slayer Corps had been lying in wait, anticipating Muzan's arrival for over 3 months. During that time, Muzan hadn't shown his face, but the number of demons had exploded. Sometimes, a village would be plagued by several demons. Even small towns were seeing 10 demons at once. Bai Lan wasn't sure what was causing this surge, but she stayed busy, turning those demons into experience. Within 3 months, she racked up over 10,000 points. Finally, more than 3 months later, Muzan appeared. By then, Bai Lan had a theory about the recent spike in demon activity. He's here. Kibutsuji Muzan, Bai Lan murmured, slowly opening her eyes in the Butterfly Mansion, headquarters of the Demon Slayer Corps. So, he spent the last few months building up his forces. Tianyin guessed right. Then it's time to call Hashira and the others, she muttered. Above her, in the night sky, a massive iceberg materialized out of thin air. The next moment, it detonated. A deafening blast echoed across the sky. Inside the Butterfly Mansion, Yu Xingming and the others, who had been using it as their base for months, looked up simultaneously. That's Mr. Bai Lan's signal. Kibutsuji Muzan has shown up, and he's engaging, Bai Ming Yu Xingming stated, and without a second glance, he grabbed his weapon and sped toward the Demon Slayer headquarters. The others followed close behind, moving as fast as they could. Muzan, this time I'll make sure you're reduced to ashes, Tamashi growled through gritted teeth as she ran, her beautiful face twisted with rage. Meanwhile, at the Demon Slayer headquarters, the Ubuyashiki clan's estate, only Bai Lan remained. Amain and the others had relocated to the Butterfly Mansion over 2 months ago, only returning occasionally. Bai Lan sat quietly, sensing Muzan's approach. He was fast, and didn't keep her waiting. Despite the massive explosion Bai Lan had just caused, Muzan didn't act as he had before, cowardly. He appeared before her with a practiced calm. Just you. How unexpected, Muzan said softly, removing his hat as he stood before her. When he arrived, he sensed only one person's presence in the mansion. It was a surprise. Still, he didn't mind taking a look. He figured the person might be a descendant of the Ubuyashiki clan. To his surprise, it was Bai Lan, the demon slayer who had killed several of his upper and lower moon demons. Though his face remained composed, Muzan's vigilance skyrocketed the moment he saw her. he didn't sense any threat from Bai Lan, as if she were an ordinary person. That was odd. How could someone who had killed Doma and Akaza be ordinary? It was precisely because she seemed so harmless that he was so wary. The last time he underestimated a demon slayer, thinking him ordinary, he was nearly torn to shreds, nearly ending his life, or rather, his unlife. That was Yoriichi Tsujikuni, creator of the first breath. The terrifying man who seemed to have no presence at all, yet sent him reeling into the abyss with a single strike. Muzan suspected this demon slayer pillar was similar to Yoriichi. Even if she wasn't, she was definitely not to be underestimated. The disaster that befell him 400 years ago had made him incredibly cautious, and he didn't act rashly. That caution was why he'd waited months before making his move. Instead, he had spent that time increasing the number of demons under his control, nurturing their power. In those few months, he had spawned several new Kazuki, filling the vacant upper moon slots. Now that he had strengthened his ranks, he could no longer wait. He followed the clues he had gathered months ago, finally arriving here, but instead of finding Obuyashiki, he found Bai Lan. That made it clear, this was a trap, and the demon slayers had been waiting for him. Wasn't I enough on my own? If I hadn't had to wait for Hashira to arrive, I would have taken you out already, Bai Lan said with a smile, bringing a teacup to her lips for a sip. Really? Does killing 2 of my men make you so proud? Muzan asked calmly, showing no anger. He wasn't surprised that Bai Lan knew about Hashira. He had already suspected she was among the demons who were immune to sunlight. What concerned him was her confidence. Such arrogance could be deadly. Regardless, Muzan didn't want to waste time with Bai Lan. Where are Hashira and that little girl? Muzan asked, his pupils turning crimson, veins bulging on his face, fangs bared. They'll be here any minute. Didn't I just say that Hashira was on her way? Bai Lan replied calmly, still smiling. What did you say? The ferocity on Muzan's face lessened, and he frowned. Logically, Tamashii and the little girl should be under the protection of the Demon Slayer Corps, not allowed to come anywhere near him. For Bai Lan to say that Tamashii was on her way was suspicious. Very suspicious. Kill her now. A flicker of unease shot through him, and Muzan made his decision. Instantly, Muzan's clothes exploded, and his body morphed into a grotesque, monstrous form. Chapter 85. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Because Muzan Kibutsuji feared Byakuran, he shifted into his ultimate battle form, his true demon self. He had white hair, and his limbs and torso were covered in blood and hair. Huge, sharp-toothed mouths erupted all over his body, 9 4-meter-long whip-like appendages sprouted from his back, and 8 7-meter-long whips extended from his legs. Byakuran, with his transparent world ability, could see the unique structure inside Muzan's body, 5 brains and 7 hearts scattered throughout. To kill Muzan permanently without sunlight, all 5 brains and 7 hearts had to be destroyed. Even Byakuran, with the perfected sun-breathing technique, couldn't kill Muzan otherwise. For centuries prior, Yoriichi Tsujikuni had cornered Muzan using sun-breathing swordsmanship, but only because Muzan was overconfident and hadn't yet modified his body. After his battle with Yoriichi, Muzan became far more cautious and rarely showed himself to the Demon Slayer Corps. Having been defeated by Yoriichi, Muzan's fear of death led him to use his medical knowledge to transform his body. These 5 brains and 7 hearts were the result of that transformation. Upon shifting to his demon form, Muzan immediately attacked Byakuran. All 17 whips lashed out indiscriminately, their terrifying speed and force creating violent sonic booms. The courtyard ground cracked, and the walls shattered and collapsed. Byakuran remained calm, appearing relaxed and unconcerned. With his transparent world activated, he could clearly see each attack and casually dodge through the gaps. Only Byakuran, with his transparent world, possessed the ability to completely evade Muzan's attacks. Other members of the Demon Slayer Corps, like Yumiai, Kaneo, Nezuko, and Tamayo, wouldn't stand a chance. In the original timeline, even the aged and weakened Demon Slayers struggled against Muzan, often getting injured. Now, Muzan was in peak condition, unburdened by the aging drug. Byakuran's figure weaved through Muzan's attacks, closing the distance. Muzan, noticing this, immediately retreated. He had modified his body and grown so many whips to avoid close-quarters combat, remembering how Yorichi Tsujikuni had exploited that weakness. Yorichi had seized the opportunity and landed devastating blows at close range. Muzan wouldn't give Byakuran the same chance, especially since Byakuran had already demonstrated a threatening level of power. He effortlessly dodged Muzan's intense attacks, showing no signs of strain. Muzan sensed no threatening aura from Byakuran, reminding him of Yorichi. Yorichi had seemed ordinary before attacking, only after the attack did Muzan understand Yorichi's power and the terrifying strength he possessed. Seeing Muzan constantly trying to create distance, Byakuran frowned. In an instant, Byakuran vanished. He reappeared right next to Muzan. If you're not going to play nice, then don't blame me for getting dirty. Byakuran thought, quickly pulling out a potion made by Tamayo from his inventory. He shoved it into Muzan's mouth, clamped his jaw shut, and violently shook Muzan's head. Before Muzan could react, he was disoriented and forced to swallow the potion. Despite having multiple brains, Muzan was caught completely off guard and swallowed the medicine in a daze. As soon as Muzan swallowed the medicine, Byakuran flashed away, escaping Muzan's attack range. Gag, hurl. What did you feed me, you bastard? Muzan finally regained his senses. He immediately began to retch, demanding an answer from Byakuran. Tamayo had prepared the drug to be fast-acting and instantly soluble, making it too late for Muzan to expel it. The effects were already spreading throughout his body. It's a humanizing drug. When it takes full effect, you'll turn back into a human. Byakuran replied with a smile. Muzan's pupils constricted. He wanted to become a perfect being, immune to the sun, not a human. He couldn't even entertain the idea. He immediately began to manipulate his cells, trying to capture and decompose the medicine's effects, but then, a voice filled with hatred came from behind Muzan. Muzan, you are here. Looking at Tamayo, who appeared behind him, Byakuran waved and greeted her. Muzan turned and saw Tamayo, becoming agitated and restless. He dashed toward her. However, a pillar of fire erupted in Muzan's path, engulfing him in flames. Rengoku's voice then echoed. Go to hell, Muzan Kibutsuji. Bastard. Chapter 86. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Jushire's hallucinations can alter reality, that pillar of fire scorching the sky. Jushire conjured it with illusions. Suddenly engulfed, Muzan felt like he was drowning in magma, his body constantly burning. The intense heat ravaged Mume, forcing his regenerative abilities into overdrive. Muzan ignored the other demons. His primary concern was, how did Tamashi gain such power? He was certain Tamashi was responsible for the firestorm, but he distinctly remembered Jushire's blood demon art being useless, only effective against minor demons. It shouldn't be capable of inflicting the kind of damage he was experiencing. As Muzan pondered, the flames intensified, shifting from orange to a deeper, more menacing red. He who had previously dismissed the flames now felt a sharp, stinging pain. Muzan Kibutsuji, today you die. Tamayo shouted, summoning a Nichiren blade from thin air and launching it toward him. Muzan barely had time to react. He sent his whip-like appendages flying to intercept the exploding blade. The clash between the Nichiren sword and the whips created a series of violent explosions. Watching the scene unfold, Bai Lan narrowed her eyes. Even though Tamashi's hallucinations can create authentic-feeling Nichiren swords, they're ultimately ineffective against Muzan. Only the breath of the sun poses a real threat, she muttered. Zuo created these Nichiren swords through illusions. She intended to use them against Muzan. Bai Lan had already shared everything about Muzan, so Tamayo knew the limitations of Nichiren swords and the necessity of the breath of the sun. But Tamayo couldn't replicate the breath of the sun. She couldn't create a Nichiren sword infused with its power. A normal Nichiren sword was the best she could do against Muzan. Tamayo's illusions could manifest real objects, but only those she understood. She understood Nichiren swords and could create them using her blood demon art. The breath of the sun, however, remained beyond her grasp, even with Bai Lan's detailed explanation. If she truly understood it, Michiro Takedo wouldn't be the only Hashira who could use it. Aside from the Hashira, only Tanjiro and Kaneo Tsuyuri would be able to learn it, so, she focused on quantity. Over the past few months, she had honed her blood demon art, now capable of generating hundreds of high-quality Nichiren swords at once. Her plan was to overwhelm Muzan with sheer volume. even if a single Nichiren sword inflicted minimal damage, a relentless barrage could overcome his regeneration. Quantity over quality was Tamashi's strategy. The clash was fierce, a constant barrage of sonic booms. No matter how many swords Muzan deflected, they kept coming, an endless stream. He decided he couldn't afford to waste any more time. If I can't defeat her quickly, I need to change tactics. Neikime, pull me into the infinite fortress. Muzan commanded through his connection to the newly appointed upper rank 2 demon. He initially wanted to devour Tamashi, accomplish his objective, and then leave. He would then wait for the drug in his system to break down before returning to deal with the Demon Slayer core. But Zhu Shi had undergone a significant transformation. The once weakling had unlocked a potent blood demon art, powerful enough to thwart his attacks and prevent him from quickly devouring her, and Bai Lan, who seemed to be a lurking threat, was watching his every move as he attacked Zhu Shi, so he didn't dare to gamble. His best option was to retreat to the infinite fortress, controlled by Neikime, and allow the drugs to break down in his body. Otherwise, the drug would take full effect, transforming him back into a human, a defenseless target. He wanted to consume Tamashi, or another girl, and acquire the gene that would grant him immunity to sunlight, fulfilling Muzan's ambition of becoming a perfect being. The next moment, an invisible spatial distortion swept through the Demon Slayer headquarters. Bai Lan and Zhu Shi found themselves in a spacious room. Muzan had vanished. Is this the infinite fortress you mentioned, Bai Lan? The blood demon art that pulled Kane and the others away. Tamashi exclaimed, recognizing the unfamiliar room and connecting it to the information Bai Lan had provided. Kane and the others had vanished when they followed Kane and others here. She had immediately recalled Bai Lan's description of Muzan's subordinate, Neikime, and her ability to manipulate the infinite fortress. She didn't know why she wasn't pulled in at the time, but she wasn't going to think about it. She just wanted to kill Muzan, so she had rushed straight to the Demon Slayer Corps headquarters. She wasn't worried about her companions being dragged into the infinite fortress, confident in their strength. Yep, this is the infinite fortress. Bai Lan observed, then activated her system internally. System, activate 100-fold comprehension increase to understand the infinite fortress. Ding. Chapter 87. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Bai Lan had always wanted to get his hands on Narunu's infinite city vampire technique. Too bad Narum works as Kabutsuji Muzan's maid and practically never shows her face. Even finding 12 demon moons was tough for Bai Lan, let alone Narunu, who was practically a ghost. Plus, Naruna had this whole Mugen City thing going on, which made finding her even harder. So, for years, Bai Lan has been unable to snag the ability he craved. Now that Naruto has dragged him into Infinite City, there's no way Bai Lan's letting this opportunity slide, even if it means cranking up the comprehension boost. Ding. Comprehension boosted 100-fold. Ding. Congratulations. You've unlocked Dimension Lord. Dimensional City, a self-contained ecosystem with an infinite modern city and a Central European-style medieval castle. The user has complete control over this alternate dimension. Huh. Dimension Lord. Modern city. People can actually live there. Wait, a self-contained ecosystem. That means this space can sustain itself, just like the outside world. Animals and plants can survive and thrive inside. It's less of a separate dimension and more like a mini-world. A slightly small mini-world, about the size of a territory. Hearing the system prompts, Bai Lan initially figured the Dimensional Lord was just another version of Infinite City. But after realizing the ecosystem was complete and understanding the Dimensional Lord's capabilities, he saw the difference. The self-contained ecosystem meant that life could actually begin there. You could grow all kinds of plants, breed all sorts of animals. It would be just like the outside world, and the modern city inside would keep on humming, replenishing its own resources after it came into existence. It's a modern person's paradise. Plus, Bai Lan had complete control, and this Dimensional Lord was super safe, tucked away in the void outside the world, perfectly hidden but still connected to Bai Lan. No external threats could get in. When Bai Lan hopped to other worlds in the future and wanted to bring people along, he could park them here. The self-sustaining modern city could keep them alive and kicking indefinitely, and if Bai Lan ever faced a life-or-death situation, he could just duck in there. Talk about hitting the jackpot. I've scored my own alternate dimension. In a flash, Bai Lan understood exactly what he'd gained. Now, Bai Lan can access the Dimensional Lord anytime he wants, but he wasn't about to bail into it now. He was in the middle of a war, for crying out loud. Bai Lan, can you pinpoint Muzan Kibutsuji's location? Zhu Shi asked, barely able to contain herself. Once Bai Lan confirmed they were inside Infinite City, she knew Bai Lan could sense everything within a 10,000-meter radius, so she was hoping he could find Kibutsuji Muzan ASAP. Got him, Bai Lan replied with a nod. Infinite City wasn't that big, definitely not 10,000 meters across. It's called Infinite City because the controller of this place can manipulate it at will, twisting the space around and making it impossible to get your bearings. So, unless you're the controller, you can't even find the edge of the city. Bai Lan sensed the girl who controlled Infinite City in the city center. As for Kibutsuji Muzan, he was holed up in a spacious room, cocooning himself to break down the power of those decomposition drugs. Bai Lan also picked up on other presences in Infinite City. Gyomei Himejima and the others were in Infinite City, too, locked in their own battles. Gyomei Himejima, Tengen Yuzui, Kyajuro Rengoku, Sanemi Shinazugawa, Abanai Iguro, Jutomioka, Kane Kocho, and the rest were engaged in a brutal fight with Kokoshibo. They were following Bai Lan's instructions from a few months back, directly focusing their efforts to take down Kokoshibo, because they'd spent months practicing together, staging mock sieges against Bai Lan to prepare for Kokoshibo. Gyomei Himejima and the others were working together flawlessly. Despite being the strongest demon under Muzan Kibutsuji, Kokoshibo couldn't land a single blow. This teamwork was partly due to Kane Kocho's unique powers. Kane Kocho had awakened superpowers, gaining the ability to control plants and even make them grow out of thin air. Every time Kokoshibo attacked, Kane could conjure trees to easily block the strikes. Watching the battle through his senses, Bai Lan nodded in satisfaction. This asterisk was the scene he wanted, not the pathetic mess from the original story. With their coordinated attacks and Kane Kocho's plant control, there was a real chance they could eliminate Kokoshibo. His only concern was whether Kokoshibo would pull a last-minute stunt like he did originally and overcome his weakness by eliminating the weakness of the head. But no matter, Bai Lan was keeping a close eye on the battlefield. If Kokoshibo even thought about breaking his limits, Bai Lan would teleport in and shut him down, no questions asked. Everyone else was also fighting their own battles. Tanjiro and the others were up against Kaigaku. Kaigaku was Zenitsu's senior brother, a guy who'd rather become a demon than die. In the original story, Kaigaku became a demon right before the final battle and shot up to upper rank 6 in no time. But this time, because Muzan Kibutsuji had delayed his visit by months, Kaigaku was much stronger than he was in the original timeline. Even with all three of them fighting together, Tanjiro and the others were locked in a stalemate. It was anyone's guess who would win. Elsewhere, Nezuko ran into Neru-chan, the second girl, who was temporarily holding her back by manipulating Infinite City. Mitsuri Kanroji was facing the new upper rank 4, Shinobu and Kaneo were fighting the new upper rank 5, Michiro Takedo was battling Gyako. Everyone had their own opponent, but unlike Tanjiro and his friends, Mitsuri Kanroji and the other 5 were clearly overpowering their enemies. It was only a matter of time before they finished them off. Based on Bai Lan's calculations, it would probably only take them 10 minutes to wrap up their respective fights. Chapter 88. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's go find Muzan Kibutsuji. Just get there already. After sensing everything in the Infinite City, Byakuren said to Tamayo with a smile. Tamayo calmed down a bit at that. She realized Byakuren wanted to get there at a steady pace, instead of teleporting directly, and there was a reason for it. Byakuren was deliberately giving Muzan Kibutsuji time to break down the drugs in his system, so the other 3 drugs could do their thing. The human transforming drug was going to be broken down no matter what, but Muzan wasn't about to let himself be turned back into a human by it. Even if Byakuren teleported them both to Muzan, he wouldn't give up on breaking down the human transforming medicine. At best, he'd fight while breaking it down. That would only slow down the process. It was better to let Muzan break down the potion completely, allowing the other 3 to take effect. The aging medicine especially worked better the longer it was in the system, so there was no need to rush. They could just wait. Byakuren had spatial perception and could sense everything in the Infinite City, so there wouldn't be any major problems. If anything went seriously wrong, Byakuran could teleport them there instantly, and judging from Byakuran's calm demeanor, everyone else was doing alright. If something had happened, Byakuran wouldn't be sitting around, he would have teleported already. Understanding all this, Tamayo's emotions settled down. Don't worry, now that Muzan Kibutsuji has shown himself, I won't let him get away. Looking at Tamayo, who was now calm, Byakuran took her hand and assured her gently. Okay, Tamayo said softly, nodding. Immediately, the two of them headed toward Muzan Kibutsuji's location. However, they were barely moving faster than a stroll. They walked and talked, heading towards Muzan's location. Luckily, Neikime was too busy holding Nezuko back to pay attention to the situation in the Infinite City. Otherwise, she would have seen Byakuran and Tamayo enjoying themselves so much on her turf, and all hell would have broken loose. Byakuran and Tamayo walked around the Infinite City for a good 10 minutes. In those 10 minutes, the 3 demons that Muzan had created over the past few months were all killed, except for the Black Death Demon, Neikime, and Nagaku. Speaking of which, Neikaime's original intention in dealing with Nezuko wasn't just to hold her back. She wanted to send Nezuko to Muzan, but Nezuko was clever. Every time Neikime made a move, Nezuko would quickly leap away. Her reaction speed was incredible, giving Neikime no chance to alter her position. Neikime tried to predict where Nezuko would land, but Nezuko's sixth sense was incredibly sharp. Each time Nezuko was about to land, she would instantly change her landing spot, using her powerful physical abilities to appear 10 meters away in an instant, invalidating Neikaime's predictions. The relationship between Neikime and Nezuko wasn't so much Neikime holding Nezuko back, as Nezuko was just messing with Neikime in the Infinite City. Nezuko, with her incredible stamina, was jumping around, with Neikime constantly chasing after her. Byakuran, who was observing the entire Infinite City, couldn't help but tell Tamayo about it. Nezuko is so cute. Hearing about Nezuko's situation, Tamayo covered her mouth and chuckled. Yeah, Nezuko is adorable. Byakuran totally agreed with Tamayo. When he watched Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba in his previous life, Byakuran was obsessed with Nezuko. Now in real life, Nezuko was just as cute. Just like right now, Nezuko was walking around, deliberately turned into a child's figure, dragging her long gown and running around. At this time, Tamayo brought something up. So, Byakuran, what are your plans after taking out Muzan Kibutsuji? What are your plans? I might leave this world and go to other worlds. I'll come with you then. Byakuran was slightly surprised by what Tamayo said and then smiled. Other worlds? This was the first time Tamayo had heard such a thing, and she was stunned for a moment. Byakuran's words were truly mind-blowing. Yeah, I have the ability to travel to other worlds. With my personality, I can't just stay in one place all the time. When the time comes, I'll take you with me to travel to other worlds. Byakuran smiled and nodded. Is that so? Byakuran, you're really mysterious. Tamayo took a few seconds to process and accept it and then smiled. She really felt Byakuran was something else. She originally thought his special blood was out of the ordinary. She didn't expect Byakuran to be able to travel across worlds. Although it was the first time she had heard the word travel across worlds, she understood its meaning easily, and because she understood, Tamayo felt Byakuran was more and more amazing. I'll give you a surprise then. Byakuran nodded, thinking of the dimensional town he had just acquired. However, as soon as he finished speaking, Byakuran frowned slightly and put his left hand on Tamayo's shoulder. The next moment, the two of them vanished. When they reappeared, they were in another place. As soon as they appeared, a fierce pipe appeared in front of Byakuran and Tamayo. Byakuran reached out and grabbed the pipe. He runs fast for a rat. Looking at Muzan in front of him, Byakuran said coldly. He was chatting with Tamayo about their future plans and was distracted for a moment. Muzan Kibutsuji took this opportunity to have Neikime teleport him next to Nezuko and attack her. This was something Byakuran couldn't forgive. The angry Byakuran wanted to kill Muzan Kibutsuji immediately. However, he calmed himself. Tamayo, Nezuko, you guys handle this together. Byakuran said to Tamayo next to him and Nezuko behind him. Chapter 89. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Both Tamayo and Nezuko have a serious grudge against Muzan Kibutsuji. They're both itching to take him down personally, and Byakuran isn't about to stop them. Even though they're not strong enough to defeat Muzan on their own, they can hold their own and get some revenge in the process. It would be awful if Muzan was right in front of them, and they weren't allowed to unleash the hatred they have pent up inside. If that were to happen, he wouldn't be angry with them, but he would definitely blame Byakuran. There's no need for his girl to blame herself over something so small. Anyway, he's keeping an eye on them, so there's no need to worry about anything going wrong. His spatial awareness can't be blocked, no matter how intense the fight gets. He's got it covered. After Byakuran said that, Tamayo stepped forward and stood in front of him. She stared at Muzan with a cold expression, and the hideous look she once had was gone. Nezuko stepped up to join Tamayo in the fight. What's going on? Narum, didn't you say those two were far from here? Muzan questioned Naruto, who was standing behind him. When he asked Naruto to teleport him, he made sure to ask if there were any demon slayers nearby. Once he knew the coast was clear, he planned to grab Nezuko as fast as he could and eat her, so he wouldn't have to worry about her anymore. Once he conquered the sun, he could deal with the demon slayer core later. But Byakuran and Tamayo showed up out of nowhere right after he started his attack. His plan was ruined. Master Muzan, this guy seems to have spatial powers, Naruto replied. As the person in control of the Infinity Castle, she's especially sensitive to spatial distortions. When Byakuran showed up, she sensed a very faint spatial fluctuation. Muzan's pupils shrank. He suddenly understood why Byakuran and Tamayo were here. Is that how he suddenly popped up next to me? I can't believe a human could master that kind of power. Muzan eyed Byakuran with more caution. Muzan Kibutsuji, we're the ones you should be worried about. Tamayo interrupted Muzan and shouted. Tamayo started her attack, creating illusions left and right. Nezuko then charged in, launching an attack with crimson flames that swept toward Muzan and wrapped around the Nichiren blade that Tamayo had manifested. All the sun blades transformed. Muzan's pupils shrank again, and he quickly waved the whip-like pipes on his body, attacking Tamayo and Nezuko. He knew about the sun blades. He suffered at the hands of Yoriichi Tsujikuni because of that sword. Tamayo and Nezuko were working together to make a bunch of sun blades at once. Even though he knew Tamayo wasn't as strong as Yoriichi Tsujikuni, he still wasn't taking any chances. Neither side planned on fighting up close, not Muzan, Tamayo, or Nezuko. Muzan had fought Yoriichi 400 years ago. Ever since that day, he's had a hard time with close combat. He modified the pipes on his body for combat. The pipes are long and can be used to attack from a distance, and they're super powerful. One whip can cut a person in half. Even the demon slayer core Hashira will be hurt if hit, and they might even be knocked out. Tamayo wasn't good at close combat either. She had no fighting skills. Nezuko was strong, but it was better for her to help Tamayo deal with Muzan than to charge into a melee. The Nichiren sword Tamayo made with her blood demon art, combined with Nezuko's flames, was even more effective. Those two are strong when they team up. I've been using my blood to make them stronger for the last couple of years. Byakuran touched his chin and smiled faintly. He thought the combined fighting power of Tamayo and Nezuko was amazing. They were better than the people currently fighting Kokoshibo. Even though Jyomiai Himejima and the others were starting to overpower Kokoshibo, they still needed time to take him down. Mitsuri, Shinobu, and Kaneo all went to Kokoshibo's side. With them joining in, it should be easier to beat him. After all, Kaneo's version of sun breathing is perfect. It's Black Death Mao's weakness. Hey, Michiro went to Tanjiro and the others. Looks like Zhou wants to go. Byakuran had his hand on Naruto's neck, watching Tamayo and Nezuko fight Muzan, while using his spatial awareness to check out what was happening in the Infinity Castle. He saw the 4 people who had already taken down Upper Moon 3, 4, and 5 rushing toward the remaining battlefields. Michiro went to Tanjiro, Inosuke and Zenitsu, and with Michiro joining, it was impossible for Enmu to resist. After all, Michiro was the one who took care of the new Upper Moon 5. Michiro can handle Enmu by himself. Tanjiro, Inosuke and Zenitsu aren't even needed. As for the battlefield where Kokoshibo is, Mitsuri, Shinobu, and Kaneo all have superpowers, and the superpowers are very powerful. Those 3 joining the fight will be the final straw to crush Kokoshibo. Sure enough, within 5 minutes, Kokoshibo was beheaded by the combined Hashira. As for Enmu, Michiro killed him instantly. Muchiro is a natural swordsman. He's progressing fast. Chapter 90. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Haishimo, Yuani's brother, is finally reaching his end, Bai Lan thought, observing the Black Death Mao battlefield. After taking down Yu, Weilong sped towards Haishimo's location with Tanjiro and the others, but Bai Lan couldn't just walk there. Too slow. He directly controlled Naruto to teleport them. That's right, controlled Naruto. Bai Lan was Naruto now. As long as Naruto lived, Bai Lan controlled the entire Infinite Fortress. Bai Lan knew the risks associated with Naruto. Once pulled into the fortress, a lot could go wrong. In the original story, Muzan even used Naruto to try and destroy her, intending to collapse the fortress and crush the Demon Slayer core inside. Knowing this, Bai Lan learned Yashiro's blood demon art ahead of time. Yashiro was the key to the core's survival in the original story. When Muzan tried to destroy Naruto, Yashiro took control of Naruto's remaining cells and sent the fortress to the surface, saving the Demon Slayers from disaster and exposing Muzan to sunlight. Now, Naruto was under Bai Lan's thumb. Muzan had completely lost control. When Bai Lan took over Naruto, Muzan tried to regain control. Failing that, he even tried to kill Naruto through their blood connection. But Bai Lan was using Sage Art at the same time. Every time Muzan tried to destroy Naruto's cells, Sage Art would heal them. Naruto's vitality was too strong. Muzan couldn't kill her that way. Besides, Naruto now had a blood supply, constantly replenishing her. Controlling Naruto also meant that Muzan had nowhere to run. Not that Bai Lan was worried. With Mokobatimo, Muzan couldn't escape him anyway. Soon, Haishimo was cornered. Kane's sun-breathing techniques were strong, and with the combined might of the pillars, Kane, and the sun-breathing abilities of Michiro and Tanjiro, they became the last straw for Haishimo. No matter how powerful, he couldn't win against everyone at once. Shortly after Kenroji Mitsuri joined the fight, Haishimo was beheaded through Shinobu's strategy and the combined efforts of the other pillars. Huh. That was too easy. Bai Lan realized something was off. Haishimo had broken through his limits, just like in the original story. Instantly, Bai Lan used Naruto to move everyone away from Haishimo. Killing a demon who'd broken his limits was hard. Sunlight was the only way. While Kaneo, Michiro, and Tanjiro all used sun-breathing, they couldn't compare to Bai Lan and Yorichi Tsujikuni from 400 years ago. Their attacks didn't carry the same solar power, and it was all or nothing. Plus, it would drain their stamina completely, preventing regeneration, and that was never a possibility. Even after fighting non-stop for a day and a night, Haishimo would still have energy to spare. Unlike Muzan, Haishimo hadn't taken the aging drug. While the Demon Slayers were stronger than average, they still had normal stamina limits. Only Kaneo, with her perfected sun-breathing, had above-average endurance. Once the Demon Slayers ran out of steam, the tables would turn. They'd be cut down by Haishimo's counterattack. Haishimo and Akaza's deaths in the original story were plot-driven. Those demons were nearly impossible to kill without sunlight. Once they broke their limits, Bai Lan couldn't let them keep fighting Haishimo. He had to step in, but he couldn't leave his current location. Zhu Shi and Nezuko were fighting Muzan nearby. Bai Lan was worried about them. The only option was to move the battlefield. Suddenly, a huge platform appeared, and everyone was teleported on top of it. This abrupt shift caught the attention of Muzan, Tamayo, and Nezuko. The others were startled too. Haishimo, you broke your limits too. You look pretty rough, Muzan said calmly to Haishimo. Haishimo's current appearance was, in a word, ghastly. The demon who'd just grown a new head was stunned. He didn't know what he looked like, but Muzan was calling him ugly. Muzan himself was hideous, covered in sharp teeth and gaping maws, and he was calling him ugly. How bad did he look? But Haishimo didn't have time to think. The Demon Slayers were on him again. The battle resumed, but soon, they stopped attacking. Bai Lan spoke up. Fall back. You can't kill him. Leave it to me. Bai Lan gripped Naruto's neck, appeared at the edge of the battlefield, and told the Demon Slayers to stand down. Without argument, they retreated. They knew Haishimo's head had been cut off, but it had grown back. That meant beheading him again wouldn't finish him. It would be a waste of time. If they were on the ground, they could keep him busy until sunrise, but the fortress had no sunlight. Even during the day, stalling wouldn't work. It would only drain their strength. Bai Lan was confident he could kill Haishimu, that's the kind of trust they had in him.